take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me say I've already gone into my Africana studies, colleagues, contemporaries, and searchers after the truth all. And let me hasten to say good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening. Certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I have always found goodbyes personally traumatizing. I said I personally have always found goodbyes traumatizing. My name is Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're worshiping with our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church at 8916 South Main. Okay, and one of our texts for today, well, let me first say that this is a social justice offering that you're viewing, and which means we don't do the hoopalistics, but we try to dig into the Word to see what God is saying to us in this contemporary world in which we find ourselves. We're trying to negotiate the scripture that says no prophecy is any private interpretation, and the tendencies that we have to say God is doing this or God is doing that now. So you will see the tension as we go along. But I can say emphatically that no one man knows what God is doing in essence, because God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And I've always driven back to the statement, that was a declaration that was made in the book of Job. It says, lo, these are parts of his ways, but how little a portion is known of him. We really don't know God as we think we know God. God knows us exhaustively. But we are struggling. We're still at the stage where the scripture writer says we see through a glass darkly. That was Apostle Paul in the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. We see through a glass darkly, but we want to make it appear on television and radio as though we were sat in God's presence and heard what his intent was, and we just deceive the public, and ultimately we deceive ourselves when we try to forecast such postures, such insight. We even Jesus said on the one thing that the disciples asked him, when will the end come? He said, even I don't know that, but the Father. So there are some things that even Jesus, who was in the bosom of the Father, did not know from everlasting to everlasting. So we err when we go out of our bounds and to try to, even if we're not trying to deceive, which most of us are, that try to have all of this obscure knowledge of God, even then we are, like I said, in the wrong. All right, now, I said more than I meant to say, but on what I was talking about. But first, hopefully, the Spirit will bring all of this together. Now, it has come to our attention that the Israeli lobby has conducted, well, it's really propaganda, but they're secretly targeted American politicians and lawmakers about the Gaza war influence campaign. And this is being conducted by the Israel's Diaspora Affairs Ministry, which is run by a political campaign firm. Some of these accounts are fake, and some of them are actual. In other words, they're using a lot of AI in order to communicate with politicians. You think you're talking to a human person, but you may be talking to AI, as it were. So the Israeli lobby propagandists are very much at work, spewing their propaganda and spinning their lies, as it were, their narrative, we'll put it charitably. Now, reports of sexual violence, in other words, going back to that rape allegation on October 7th of 2023, it appears that none of that happened. That a lot of those things are, those reports rather, are propaganda. Because if you think about it, if someone can tell you about a rape for somebody else, then you better check that one that's doing the talking. Because when they began to research these reports, they couldn't find the people. It was being bandied about by the Israeli IDF, but the people that they said were raped were not coming forward and have not come forward yet. All of the reports and claims to the contrary, you can't actually find that, and the ones who tried to give so much detail, when they were pressed on the detail, they couldn't back it up. So then you have to press pause on some of the rumors and innuendo that was attached to October 7th. Actually, only one baby child was killed on October 7th, and that child was not beheaded. Conversely, on the IDF side, they have raped the Palestinian women with impunity. And a man, if not this week, certainly last week, was seen holding up the decapitated body of his baby. But that baby was decapitated. He was a Palestinian man, let me hasten to add. That baby was decapitated as a result of an explosion, not because someone intentionally sliced off his head. But it didn't take away from the trauma of a dead child. Sure, you can sympathize with that. And we don't want to grow callous and insensitive to the carnage that's occurring around us, whether it's a continent away or whether it's next door. Until all of us are free, none of us are free. And the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, that's what he observed. He says, yes, Ghana may be free, but Namibia is not free, and Nigeria is not free, and the Republic of Congo is not free. Until all of us are free, then none of us are free. Keeping in mind that the petitioning that was done by the Europeans is still in effect, where you have a Ghana, and then you have another country over here, you got another country over here, and if you want to go to Ghana, you're going to have to get a passport from this country to go to that country. And if Africa was, the continent was a whole, as it was originally, then they would be like Europe. You can go from France to Belgium or to Barcelona or any of those countries without changing your passport. You just need the one passport. But Africa is balkanized, and you can't go from one country to the next country freely. And so that is what Nkrumah was talking about. We need to throw the African continents, African countries rather, must throw off this neo-colonial system that has divided them up from one another. And so you got a president over here, and you got a president over here, and a president over here, and a president over here. So what is that? That's ego, and that's I'm going to overcome you, or I'm going to overcome you. You know, that's what you call divide and conquer, and it's working on the continent of Africa. Oh, moving forward, the next thing we want to cover is that I believe it's next week that Netanyahu will come to the United States of America as the guest of Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who is a rabid Trump Republican, and Netanyahu is going to speak before the Congress. You remember the last time Netanyahu spoke for the Congress, it was an insult in the face of then President Barack Obama. And the powers that be at that time, John Boehner, and I'm slipping on the other names, but they were principals. Oh, I think what's his name was in there. No, he had got out by that time, Newt Gingrich. But it was a very rabid Congress under Obama's first and second term. They wanted to make him a one-term president, and as a result, everywhere they could embarrass him or stick it in his eyes, so to speak, they did so. Even though Obama was, middle of the road, he was not to the left, neither to the right. He was middle of the road. He was on their side, really. Compare that Congress to the Congress that we have now, where you have rabid, retrograde Republicans in charge, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Of course, we've already mentioned Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker, the man he replaced, was no less rabid than he was. And so all of these things we as voters need to be taken into account when we get ready to go in that voting booth. In other words, Netanyahu came and he flicked his nose at President Obama. And Obama, of course, tried to be very diplomatic, take the high road. When they go low, we go higher, following up with that philosophy as far as he was able. And at the same time, Netanyahu is having a conflict within his own Netanyahu administration in Israel, because if he accepts the deal that has been hammered out by President Biden and Hamas with the assistance of Egypt, then the how shall you identify them? The rebellious, the zealots in his own party have threatened to depart, which means that he would have to form another coalition government. They don't have, Biden says they're a democracy, but I don't see them as a democracy. They don't operate as a democracy. They operate as an autocracy, as an oligarch, and to keep from saying that they are authoritarian. But that is the specter under which Netanyahu is coming here next week to address a joint session of Congress. Yes, it's a joint session because there are bipartisan support. That's what the word I was looking for his coming. And I don't see where that was going to be very helpful. Now, moving on to this week, June 6th of this week was the 80th commemoration of the D-Day invasion of what they call the Normandy invasion, and President Biden was one of the principal speakers there. And one thing, you know, the military was segregated during those times. And so those same segregationists that were young then, and when they invaded Normandy, are old now. Some of them are in their wheelchairs and all like that. But they're still there acting like they're holding up the world for democracy, a democracy which we have yet to see, I might add. But what was noteworthy about President Biden's speech on June 6th was that he called the name of one of my friends who is still living here in Los Angeles, who was in the Red Ball Express. That was the that's what they allowed the Negroes to do, was drive the trucks. They didn't want them on the guns, or they didn't want them in the tanks. They didn't want them on the artillery pieces, although they did have to get in the tanks and get on the artillery pieces and pick up the rifle on many occasions, leading General Patton to say of the 369th Armored, which was called the Black Panther Battalion, that they were the most, prolific and hard-fighting battalion, tank battalion, that he had in the war. He actually requested them, although everybody spoke ill of them in their official reports. We come to find out years later, we being researchers like myself and historians and myself and others have come, and how I came up on it. I came up on it through a book by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who himself is a very and prolific historian. He dug into that, and he came up with this tank battalion, and how they were, even though they were overlooked by the mucky-mucks up there with General Patton, yet their accomplishments, their exploits that they accomplished from the Bulge to the end of the war were so distinctive and heroic that even posthumously, they are being, a lot of them are being granted the medals that they did not get at that time. They got the silver, they got the Purple Heart, true, but now they're getting from the Silver Star on up to the Congressional Medal of Honor. At that time, of course, it was a stated practice and policy in the Defense Department that no black person would ever get a Medal of Honor. But since since Truman desegregated the Army in '52, and a commission has been going back reviewing those records post 1968, then they have begun to recognize that a lot of those black people were heroes, that they did heroic work, charging machine gun pits in order to protect their platoons, all that type of thing they were doing. And but to get back to my story, Mr. Lewis Brown's name was called by President Joe Biden, and a friend of mine called me up and said, "I just heard Lewis Brown's name on the in the president's speech." So I immediately got on YouTube and watched Lawrence O'Donnell, and he had that speech up, and true enough, Biden talked about the naval people, and he talked about the artillery people, and he talked about all the people that were making an effort, a contribution, an achievement on D-Day and after. And then he comes around and said, but it was not just we had a lot of people of color. That's why we went into it. And he said, Louis Brown. And I almost jumped out of my seat because Brown was over there this week with them. And I can't wait for him to get back and tell us how he felt when he heard the President of the United States call his name. But that I thought that was very noteworthy. And of course, it made an impression on me. It may not make an impression on you. But like I said, a lot of times in the World War II, that was the only thing that they would allow black people, well, at that time we colored, or Negro, but that is all that they would allow a colored man, a colored infantryman, or colored anything, whether he's on a Navy ship or on the Air Force or what. All it did allowed you was to drive truck, peel potatoes, stuff like that. Keep a gun out of your hand, because the white supremacists have always had a suspicion of the black man or black woman that we might try to get even, which may not be a bad idea. But I digress. Anyway, it was good to hear one of our brethren that had not yet passed on, but was at least recognized by the president of these here United States. Another black man in a wheelchair, I saw him, but I didn't pick up his name. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that speech again, because he was awarded the French Croix de Guerre by President Macron. I think that's how they pronounced it, the Frenchman's name. But this black fellow got the French Croix de Guerre. And a lot of black people that were serving over in France prior to the Normandy invasion were so gallant and fought so hard that the French recognized them, even when General Pershing, who was in charge of all of the armed forces overseas, said, "Now don't give these colored people, Negroes, that much recognition, because we don't give them that recognition back home." But even then, the French, who are also racists and colonizers, but when the black troops in their area fought so gallantly and were so heroic and valiant in their defense of France, that the French people just lauded them and complimented them and praised them, and that type of thing. But yet when they got back here, they got the Isaac Woodard treatment. But that's neither here nor there. But at least, as I said, Mr. Brown didn't get a medal, but he got something just as good. He got his name spoken out of the president's mouth, and recognizing his work in the what do they call them? The Red Ball Express there in Europe. And so I thought that was a high compliment, high honor, Mr. Louis Brown. He'll be back home either this week or next week. What the day's Friday? He may be back Monday or Tuesday, because they were over there for D-Day observances. And I thought that was fabulous, fabulous. I guess I'm getting off of my subject too. As I get ready to close, coming back to America, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has appointed 2 January 6th committee insurrectionists to the House Intelligence Committee. And if it was ever 2 people that need to be kept as far away from the House Intelligence Committee, looking at the secrets of Americans. Okay, thank you so much. 5 minutes, y'all. It is Scott Perry and what was the other guy's name? Ronnie Jackson. Scott Perry and Ronnie Jackson. And now Scott Perry is from he represents Pennsylvania, portions of Pennsylvania. And Mr. Scott Perry had his phone seized by the FBI following the January 6th insurrection. And Scott Perry also petitioned Donald Trump, who was president at that time, for a presidential pardon. Of course, he didn't get it, but he did request it. And he was the author of the scheme, of the whole scheme, to overturn the 2020 election. But now he's on the House Intelligence Committee. Can you consider a more macabre and strange conflagration? Who would put an insurrectionist on the House Intelligence Committee? And Mr. Ronnie Jackson is no better, because he's been accused of bringing drugs onto the House floor so that people could work late. And he was a Ronnie Jackson was protected by the Oath Keepers. And you know the head of the Oath Keepers is in prison for January 6th insurrection. I think he got 30 years. But they believe, the Oath Keepers believe, that Mr. Ronnie Jackson had critical info. And now Mike Johnson, in order to burnish and enhance his conservative credentials with the presumptive Republican nominee for president, Donald Trump, who is now a convicted felon too, I might add. Convicted felon, 34 counts, conviction, felon. Put that on his name. But the retrogrades and the fire eaters are still in charge of the nation. If Trump gets back in, I imagine that will be, if it's not the end of democracy now, it certainly will be the end of democracy if he gets elected. Because he has already laid out his platform that he's going to get even with all of the people that have been going after him in court, and that means the DAs, and everybody's going to have to look out. And he plans to pardon all of the January 6th insurrectionists. He doesn't call them insurrectionists. He calls them hostages. But at any rate, you get the drift. In case you're not planning to vote on in November. Remember, it may be the last time you have to vote for democracy, because if Trump gets in, you're going to have an authoritarian person in the highest office in the world, in the Oval Office. And if that ain't scary, then you haven't been paying attention. All right, so as I begin to wrap up, elections matter. The reason why we got 3 extremists on the Supreme Court is because of Donald Trump. Those of us that didn't vote for the presidency, you can see why that voting for the president, why your vote matters, rather. And if he was only able to, if Biden only won by 5 million votes, then that means every vote counts. And so you're going to have to suck it up. I know you don't like Biden. I don't like him either. But I'm going to vote for him. Because we can't get this other retrograde back in power. Because that would spell the end of democracy as we know it. A government of the people, for the people, and by the people, as Abraham Lincoln said. Finally, they're playing my theme music. If you're working on a job, again, and they don't want to pay you, take my considered advice and don't waste your life. Don't get caught in the trap of just working paycheck to paycheck. If they don't want to pay you what you're worth, don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We out of here.